There's a crisis in the West.
Let's not waste it. Let's make sure it counts.
Who has water and who controls the water?
We could have a shortage declared.
Who's going to be the winner and who's going to be the loser?
They're in such an extreme drought compared to us.
Desperation, not conservation.
You all need to learn how to change your lifestyle right now.
Because of the drought, we were forced to leave this ground here behind me fallow. You can just see a few weeds out there. That's why we're hoping it rains and so we can farm it all next season. Some of this represents products that we canceled that we used to grow. For example, 2 years ago, we had a pretty large romaine program here in Nipomo, and we had to cancel that.
For the last 4 years, California's rain and snowfall have been dropping dramatically. The region hit the hardest is the Central Valley, where much of the state's agriculture is located. This includes the farm Juan manages in Nipomo, California. His operation is part of a larger network owned by Duncan Family Farms. This historic drought has caused a 50% loss of production at his location.
We haven't seen anything like this before. I know there was a drought back in the 80s, but this is the first one I've been experiencing. If we would have had to cut back on one of our larger farms 50% like we did here, that would be devastating. We weren't be able to stay in business. We really can't handle any more cutbacks, so if the drought continues, we're going to have to start looking in other growing regions where it's not affected as much with the drought. Our harvest crews, they normally start at midnight, so by 10 a.m. at the latest, they should be pretty much done. Because as you can see, our products, since it's a baby item, it's really tender, so it will wilt right away, especially with this heat. We would just harvest the larger leaves like this. This is the bunch that you would see in the store.
Despite the temperature being 10 degrees above average, Juan's farm in the Central Valley still ships kale and bagged salads all over the U.S. and Europe. His operation is lucky. There are enough other locations to make up for the production loss here.
The hardest part about the drought has been cutting back on workforce. We had to cut back on people. We used to have more year-round employees, and now with the drought, we need less, probably half of our workforce. This is wild arugula, and it's ready to be harvested. So within a couple of days, should be bagged in a salad. We're also hoping we have a wet winter, so the rain can replenish our wells. Because if it doesn't rain, we're going to have to cut probably another 10% or move crops to Arizona. The last 4 years, it's been an average of 10% each year. So yeah, our wells are pumping 30 to 40% less water than they were in 2012. If the drought continues, they're going to have to they're going to start regulating our wells probably. Yeah, we should be very concerned that if this drought continues, then we can't get any more farmers. We're pretty much going to run out of food.
And now we have to live with a very serious drought of uncertain duration. Right now, it's imperative that we do everything possible to mitigate the effects of the drought. I've convened an interagency drought task force, declared a state of emergency. We need everyone in every part of the state to conserve water. We need regulators to rebalance water rules.
Imagine you have a friend, and this friend helps you do everything. Helps you cook and clean, even helps you stay alive. The craziest part? This friend travels several hundred miles every time you need it. Guess what, LA? Water is that friend. But lately, our friend water has felt a little taken for granted. It's time to ask ourselves every time we go to use water, is this good use of our friend? Let's turn this one-sided relationship around. Start with shorter showers and fixed faucets and beautiful California-friendly landscapes. Let's do this, LA, but pretty soon, our friend may not stick around. To learn more about how you can save the drop, visit SaveTheDropLA.org.
A drought is difficult to explain, and it depends on where you are. Okay, drought means that you are you're receiving less precipitation than you would normally expect in a cumulative fashion. California, up until recently, the last 4 or 5 years, has had significant amounts of snow, or enough in the Sierra and stuff to meet their needs. Now all of a sudden, they're not. 4 years in a row is a pretty big problem. And so they're in a little bit of a desperation situation. Like, you all need to learn how to change your lifestyle right now. The implications are severe. The 25% reduction in water use is a big hit for somebody to take who's not used to making those kinds of sacrifices. It could potentially devastate some of their agricultural industry. And the hard part is who's going to be the winner and who's going to be the loser. Who's the person that's going to get the water for their crops and who's going to not get it for theirs. That's decisions they'll have to make. We'll certainly be affected by it. The whole country will be affected by it, and the price of a lot of the foodstuffs that we get in the grocery store that we get because California can grow year-round. Other states grow a lot of things in the summer. Come winter, they're shut down. They're not growing all those vegetables and fruits and things like California is. So it will definitely have an impact. There's water wars. I mean, people have been dying and killing each other over water for hundreds of years or more.
Dry farmers have been hit extremely hard by the drought. These farmers rely solely on rainwater instead of irrigation. The lack of rain means less food coming from these farms.
I own and operate With the Grain. It's a farm that I started that focuses on heirloom grain and cereal crops and different seed crops, and I've been farming for about 10 years. Yeah, I just had a rather crash course in farming. I didn't grow up on a farm. I just fell in love with it on my own. So I got into dry farming because I just love the connection with the elements of nature, and dry farming is this really intimate relationship with the seasons and the cycles of nature and the way that they present themselves. There's a lot of dancing with nature that happens when you rely on the weather. And for me, that dance with nature is what keeps it so alive and vibrant, and why I get so excited about it, because I feel like it's been my ultimate teacher. The drought for the last few years, there isn't even enough moisture, enough rain and moisture in the ground to even produce a crop. It's not just a bad crop, it's just like no crop. in those situations, there's nothing really to do in dry farming. You can't apply water. You basically have spent a lot of money putting your seed in the ground. You've been paying for the lease for the ground. You've been paying for your tractor time on the ground, and all those expenses are just part of your experience for what happened. And you're up all night and you're doing this work, and it's just so exhausting, and you're just racing as fast as you can to make it happen. And you're burning energy that doesn't really exist for you. And then you get it all done, and then something doesn't happen, and the weather doesn't come through. It's heartbreaking. It's just like so devastating that it just requires you to go even deeper inside to find this will and passion to continue. As a community, I've really noticed that other farmers are having the same challenge. Even farmers that are third, fourth, fifth generation farmers or ranchers. I know a number of ranchers that have had to sell a lot of their herd, and for them, their money and their life is tied up in the genetics of their animals. So when they get rid of their animals, that's not something that you go and you buy. That's something that you've bred and you've worked with, and it's deeply impactful.
On policymakers around the world. And
modern tractors, radios, air conditioning. So this is the office a lot of the time. There's not a lot going on. We're just getting ready, and they're saying that it's going to be some weather this year. It's going to be favorable, but we'll see. They've said that last year too. And you know, you can't blame anybody trying to predict the weather, but it sure would be nice to be able to have a little bit more predictability around it. This last year I had a small crop, but the year before last I had 0. And the year before that I had a very marginal crop. So for me to go from operating, you know, all these acres to basically having 0 crop come back, it's really challenging. It's a complete loss, basically. The hardest part about the drought for me has been that I was expanding my farm and wanting to grow the amount of land I was cultivating. I made some investment, and it just got met with a bunch of dry conditions that were kind of out of my control. And so for me, the biggest challenge has just been that it just radically affected my trajectory towards becoming a more kind of operationally sustainable farm. I've developed a sincere, heartfelt compassion for all kinds of farmers. It doesn't matter. Anybody who's in farming today is in farming because they love farming, and they're committed to what they want to see in farming.
so this current map of California showing the drought is what's taken place over the past 4 years. So it took 4 years of having one dry season after another for it to get this extreme in Central California. And even that, you know, going all the way along the coast down into Southern California as well. So what El Nino will help with is the fact that we'll get so much rain. So right now, since they've been in a drought for 4 years, it would take around 24 inches of rain to help, not necessarily to replenish everything, but to just help with the drought. And right now with El Nino, predictions are showing that we'll get about 21 inches of rain in California. So it's still not enough, but it's a little bit in something that they haven't seen in years. This is the most recent Arizona drought map. And you can see we don't have the extremes that, say, California has. So our map's a little bit different color-wise. So when you're looking at this area that we see right here, you can see that that's just abnormally dry. So it means we're probably just a few inches below where we should be for this time of year with our rainfall totals. So El Nino will definitely change the way the map looks next year, just because of the fact that we will get rain, not as much rain as some of the other states like California and Nevada and say Utah are going to get, but we will get enough to where you'll start to see more of this map being in the yellow category where you're just abnormally dry. So you're not too far off the mark at that point. So this is kind of an overview of Lake Mead, and it goes from 1985, this first picture, to 2010. So even just that extreme kind of shows you how much the water supply has gone down. I mean, if you look at all the bays and the coves and how full they were back in 1985, and then you come over to this map and none of that's here. And that's in 2010. So 5 more years has gone by at this point. This gone down to half. So we need El Nino. We need to find ways to conserve the water, use the water smartly, because in another 5 years, it could be completely gone.
El Nino is a cyclical weather event that occurs when the water in the Pacific Ocean warms up for at least 3 months in a row. It causes more winter rainfall in the southwest United States. The 2015 El Nino is expected to be one of the strongest on record.
We need to see several years of an exceptional El Nino pattern to be able to catch up, because you have to remember the population grows. You know, farmers, they expand their farms as well. We're growing more here in the United States instead of importing a lot of our goods. So we have to keep up with all of those demands. So the more that we put a demand on it, the more we need to be seeing, 20, 30 inches of rain each and every year, not once every 5 years.
Farmers are hoping this brings the rain they desperately need.
California's challenges, some of their challenges are because some of the things they didn't do. They're mandatory curtailments that the governor instituted. I don't see that as water conservation. I see that as your demand exceeded your supply, you've got to do something drastic. That's desperation, not conservation. We, on the other hand, for 30 years have systematically reduced our demand through conservation programs. Arizona's water use between 1957, most current data we have is 2013 on the front end. But in that time period, the total water use in our state has actually gone down by 100,000 acre feet. So we were using 7.1 million acre feet in 1957, now we use 7 million. At the same time, our population increased 6-fold. We've been more proactive than California, and that's why we're in better shape than they are right now today. It's really a reflection of the holistic approach to water management and how you can grow your economy, grow your population, without necessarily having to grow your water use.
States in the Southwest have been debating water rights for decades. Landmark Supreme Court decisions give California top priority when it comes to water from the Colorado River. Historically, this meant California did not need to focus on water conservation. On the other hand, Arizona has always had to lobby for its allotment of the Colorado River. This, combined with its desert landscape, means Arizona farmers are used to dryness. Yuma, Arizona is the largest grower of winter lettuce in the U.S. and the country's 3rd largest vegetable producer. Farmers here are uniquely equipped to handle year-round drought conditions and are very efficient in managing their water.
Yuma is a very interesting place. Yuma gets about 3 inches a year of rain, and they usually get 2 inches of it in one storm, typically. And then the rest is kind of scattered. If you talk to a lot of the farmers in Yuma, they would prefer that it never rain, because they apply their water. Everything is completely irrigated. They never depend on the rainfall. And the problem is when the rain comes, it interferes with the scheduling of when they put the water on, because they want to put it on in precise amounts at exactly the right times.
So the biggest things we struggle with are weather events. As far as challenges, most of the products that we're producing, most of them are in pretty good demand. The issue is to stay profitable. When the rain comes, it disrupts that. It disrupts planting in dry soil, germinating. That seed, that lettuce seed, is tiny. And when you take something that tiny, and I have a field, I'll show you out in Welton. I have about a 60-acre field. I have 20 acres right in the middle of it that's virtually wiped out. Yuma, in this area, we're very efficient with our water use. we do more with less, if you will. And a lot of us take a tremendous amount of pride in the uniformity and the precision that we do our jobs with. Wasting water isn't something any of us would be proud of. So we're using it to the maximum efficiency. And I think over time, over the next couple decades, we'll see even further improvement in some of the efficiencies. We're always looking for that next new technique or step or way to do it. We use GPS guidance equipment to guide tractors to get increased uniformity and quality of work, both for putting up beds and for doing tillage work like that. Provides for the most uniform and quality crop. It's an interesting business. There's always things to, like say, curveballs coming your way, but some things seem like clockwork for us. We get our employees trained with our processes and what we're doing, and then there's always something new popping up. And I'm not the only farmer down here doing this. There's a couple hundred of us, managing farms and managing operations in one way or another to produce all these winter vegetables that come out of the Yuma area. Very, very reliable weather patterns here. They cause trouble sometimes, but it's far more predictable here than it is most other places. Lettuces and things that we produce here are supplying the vast majority of what the U.S. and Canada are consuming each year. So we try to be very judicious, and like I say, the guys that work for me and what we're trying to accomplish, and most of the farmers around here, they're trying to use a minimal amount of irrigation water to accomplish the same task, and that's less means more. Some things happen out west out here that are unique to the rest of the country. Growing crops in an arid climate can be a really good thing. You can grow a crop in that sort of relative humidity and grow it with fairly limited amount of water input and do it very productively for the benefit of all. It's a neat thing that happens here the year round, and we're punished and privileged with the opportunity to do it year round. It's a unique opportunity, and this is some irreplaceable farm ground. There's a lot of hand wringing and rending of garments over there in California right now, and we'll have to see. We can only learn from their experiences. It's daunting. I can't even imagine what some of those families that they've built generations worth of effort into what can be gone like that.
Water touches every part of our lives. You need water for your basic household needs, including drinking water, showers, etc., things like that. You also need water for what I'll describe as quality of life.
They've done things like put water restrictions. They've done things like raise the water rates. They've paid people to dig up their lawns and put in drought-tolerant landscaping. They're doing what they can, but again, even more needs to be done, because if it continues and we have these dry seasons one after another, we're going to use up all of our water. And that's going to be the next war for us then. It's not going to be about a war of territory. It's going to be about a war over who has water and who controls the water.
Something has to be done. They're going to have to regulate the water somehow, and we need to conserve. We don't want to run out.
So when I think about having a sustainable water future for California, I imagine that it's going to take a lot of education for the consumer, because the consumer makes the choices about what kinds of food they're going to be supporting, and therefore what kind of farm they're going to be supporting. It's really easy to just say, well, that water is being used for agriculture, but it's not being used for agriculture. It's being used to support people. It's not agriculture, this random thing. It's food for people, and people want to go to the store, and people want to have the ability to take a vacation, and they want to have the ability to show up at work every single day and just expect that things show up. And the reason that they have that much predictability in their life is because water is available all the time.
As the sun sets on another day in Central Valley, California, farmers continue to hope for an end to this strange new reality. An end to the uncertainty. An end to the drought.